Hello.
Alrighty, thank you. Are you gonna go on tour?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay.
Is it okay to film?
Starting, right now. What time is it?
I'll let you go first. That way you
It's
can
12 o'clock. Well, you guys go.
record everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's okay to film?
You have to ask them in the house,
Okay.
because sometimes they don't like the, I need your zip code.
72712. I'm local.
Okay. Sometimes they don't like to be filmed, so ask them. So go down with them.
Okay.
The front of the house.
Okay. Hello. You give the tour? Okay. Is it okay to film?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get you signed together before you're there.
How are you doing?
Picture up here shows Mr. Pugh in front of the house.
Where's that?
Right here.
Oh, right here.
Back in 1910, that was when he sold it. Now, the people that he sold it to asked him to come back because they want a picture of the original builder.
Did it not have the well there? Oh, is this the front right here?
This is the
okay.
front.
I got you. It's off the side.
So that's the front of the house. And they blew it up and showed it because it shows you it was a brick building originally.
And that's
now it's been
stucco.
stucco, yeah.
When was it stucco?
Probably around the late 20s, 30s, early 30s.
I got you.
Because the brick was starting to deteriorate.
Yeah.
If you look around this room, first of all, the stairwell is all original, flooring's all original. The woodwork is all painted. That's what they did back then. They painted woodwork to look like upper scale wood because it was usually the cheapest wood available.
Yeah.
Because when they built a home, and usually it was pine, you know, with the knots and all that. Now, I grew up in an area where it was all dark wood. They did dark painting.
I gotcha.
But she was from the South. This is considered the South. So it was a light color, and the reason was to cut down on the heat. You know, houses. I lived in lived in Florida for 17 years. Houses there were like that.
All the
They were
colors
light
were
color.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, they did the light color woodwork because of the heat.
Yeah.
And bottom line is, if you go back to 1854, that's when Mr. and Mrs. Peel recorded. It was courting back then, and it was in the next county over. She was from Alabama,
Oh, wow.
and he kept asking for a hand in marriage. She kept turning him down. Finally, she said, "I'll marry you if you give me a house which I'm accustomed to." She was from Alabama, came from a lot of money. I don't think she had a plantation, but she grew up in a house similar to this, I think. Now, he was living in the next county over, that's where they met. And bottom line is, she finally said she'd marry him if he gave her a house which she was accustomed to.
Wow.
That was kind of a crass thing to say, but If you consider Mr. Walton moved that cabin here, now he moved the cabin here, number one, to show you what an upper scale house looked like. That was considered upper scale, that cabin that you were in.
Really?
So
So
I'm
this
wondering.
is the top 1-2% in this type of house?
Yeah, and of course this was even worse here because it was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's nothing.
There was nothing here. I mean, yes, there was a lot of trees and branches and different things, you know, but they didn't have a house like this, so this was extraordinary
I got
back then. And I have a feeling that she said that way because she was afraid she was gonna get a house like that. Because maybe when they were in the next county over, maybe it wasn't fancy like this, you know. So that's why she said that. But unfortunately, they got married in 1854, but the house wasn't built till 1875. So she had to wait a long time
20 years?
for her dream house, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
And you had the Civil War in between that,
Oh.
which was even worse.
Halted a bunch of stuff.
Now, they lived in the next county over, which was similar to this, very close to the border of Missouri, which was considered the north, and this was considered the south. But from that experience, he came home to what was left of his property there, because he was in the Civil War, came back colonel. And what was left of his property was a burnt down barn.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, see, everything had been pilfered from either side because the men needed food. They were
That's just,
learning how to
that was
food.
just kind of a thing in those times.
Yeah, it was just they had
They
some
had-
awful things that were going on, you know. Anyway, bottom line is he came back to what was left of his property, which was a burnt down barn, and 5 children and a wife starving to death, and he had been starving for quite some time. So I think from that experience he marched to a different beat.
Mm.
He just kind of, he wasn't exactly for the South that you would consider.
I got you.
But he was in the Civil War and he had to be, you know. Anyway, bottom line is, and Mr. Walton bought all this property. Now, when he bought this property, he wanted to build that store back there. And he wanted to build the store because he wanted his buyers to be able to run across the street. Of course, now it's being built over in J Street. I don't know if you're from around here. Yeah, so you know about that. Anyway, bottom line is it was his wife that saved this.
Yeah.
There was a newspaper article that tells you the house was within 48 hours of being torn down. They had the bulldozers poised out here.
Oh.
And it was Mrs. Walton that saved it. She stopped him from demolishing it and said, no, you gotta restore it.
When did they build that Walmart?
91.
91.
Yeah, that's when, because when he bought this property, that's when they built the house, the Walmart. But we also have a picture that shows you some stuff back there of the house originally that was taken back in 1991 when he started to restore it, and his house was in bad shape.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was-
These old homes are hard
And it
to
took the
restore.
kind of money that the Waltons had. And because of that, a foundation was started, and that foundation encompasses all the outdoor activities, you know, outdoor stuff, including the 35 miles of bicycle paths that go from here all the way down to Fayetteville.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
One observation that I'm making on these homes, why were these walls so thick?
Okay, the walls were thick because they didn't have insulation.
So what they used,
Solid brick.
that's
walls.
solid brick
That's
walls?
solid brick
That was
walls.
a form of giving some sort of insulation.
Insulation, yeah. Now when you get, these are like approximately 23 to 24 inches deep.
Yeah.
Upstairs, when you get there, only like 18 inches. They didn't do quite as much up there, insulation. And then when they built this house, they also built, that's called a hidey hole. They could hide things in there.
ahí
Was a safe.
esconder las cosas.
You know, a lot of houses back then were built with this part that came off, and this was hollowed out. And they put the deed to the house down it. That's how they, but also it could be used like a hidey hole too. You
That's
know.
neat.
Anyway, back. From here, we're gonna go off in this room over here. So go on in here. This is called the study. Now, if you look around this room, I sometimes call this a man cave for the children. you know, because it's darker.
Yeah, that's what I just thought. It's
Yeah.
like Dad's office just for a rich guy a long, long time ago.
Pictures of him, I compare this picture to Colonel Sanders.
Mm.
It's got that look to it. But that's probably the picture of him when he came back from the Civil War, which I didn't know this kind of information, and that was back in the Civil War when they fought for the South. In his situation, he'd been training the law in law offices
Mhm.
before he went to the Civil War. But he went to the Civil War when he was about 25. And when he came back from the Civil War, he wanted to be a lawyer because that's what he'd been studying all the years. So he had to write a letter to the government declaring that he would be for the whole Union and wanted to be a lawyer. So that's what that's all about. There's a copy of the letter he did. But back then,
Is this wallpaper similar to what would have been original back then?
we have proof of this wallpaper.
Oh, it's like,
Here, the picture. And if you got a magnifying glass out, you'd realize
you
it's the
can
same
look
wallpaper.
at it, it's the same stuff.
Uh-huh. This is a reproduction.
Sure.
You know, there's a company out of England that does reproductions. I did a house in California for 10 years. They had this same wallpaper in 3 rooms. But that
I
way,
like it, it's pretty cool.
well, it denotes more farmhouse style because it's got the wheat on it. You know, there's lots of wallpaper that have big flowers and that type of thing. On this desk here, this is some Confederate money, which was of no value after the Civil War. That's his wallet, so that probably came out of his wallet. Those are a couple-
$10, $5 is a lot of money back then for it not to be worth money.
I just turned this over for the first time. Turn that over. It's really kind of weird. The back of it. Vote
Oh,
for
wow.
somebody.
Oh, wow.
Which I never knew before. I never turned that over. And it kind of interesting.
What year would this money have been about?
I don't know.
Value?
See if there's a year on there. I don't know. I haven't looked. Civil War time
That is
though.
so crazy. That looks like the Levi's logo, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
That's it. Oh yeah, yeah.
Doesn't it?
These are a couple letters he wrote. Now those letters were written to his daughter. When he became a lawyer, he became a prosecuting attorney for Bentonville.
Mm-hmm.
And he started a law practice with his brother-in-law, his wife's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the two of them became very politically minded. The brother-in-law came back from the Civil War minus a leg. And he became one of our 16th or 17th governor. And he was in the Senate, the brother-in-law. Colonel Peel's claim to fame was that he went to Congress. And he was in Congress for 10 years. But what he did was kind of unusual, I think, considering he was a war criminal and he fought for the South and all that. Bottom line is, there's a map over here, just Oklahoma. But he represented 4 states here, because we've got Oklahoma right at the corner here. You've got Kansas, and you've got Missouri, and then Arkansas. He represented all the Indian tribes. They were handing out property back then, you know, territory, as they called it. And just that as a map of just Oklahoma, but each state had a similar situation. People don't understand how much Indian stuff was here. I mean, at least people from the north, which I'm from the north originally. And you know, you hear about it, but you don't until you live here and really realize how much it encompassed and how much it was horrible for the people that lived here. You know, he came back from the Civil War with a different attitude on life. He'd watched what was going on in the Civil War. He came back and saw what happened just with his own property. And because of it, he marched a different beat. Just really
Was he in the rocks?
No, that was created by a local man,
Okay.
and it rotates. We don't touch it anymore because it's very, very old. There's 3 of them in existence. We have one.
3 of the.
It has 6 sides to it.
I
But it
gotcha.
rotates, but we don't move it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line is
So this wasn't his original.
no, but this was created by a man who's long gone,
Mm-hmm.
and we have one of them. His family has one, and the Smithsonian has one.
What's the deal with these vases? I've seen a couple of them
Okay.
already.
Back then, it was a big way of showing off to
Your
people
wealth.
that they had money, because they could afford to get things across the ocean.
Does
Now,
this have a
fe-
significant value today?
Well, it's all,
It
Gold.
looks like it does. What?
it's gold. It's gold on there.
Oh,
yeah.
the trimmings and
Yeah,
stuff?
that's all gold. I don't know what they were used for. People always ask, what were they used for? I don't know. Or just for show off, maybe. I don't know. But it was a way of showing off to the public here that they had money to be able to afford something across the ocean. So that's why they brought in the Asian influence. They did something very similar in the house I did in California, just because that was a big deal to do back then. If you look around, you see the fireplace there. The fireplace was in pieces on the property, but it's an original fireplace. You saw it in the photograph here.
Yeah.
And we had to hire somebody to put it back together because it was in really bad shape. It was in 19 pieces on the property. And he restored the whole thing. But once again, we are very lucky to have him because he lived locally, but he also worked at the Smithsonian.
Oh, wow.
And he restored this painting, and he restored the spindles that had to be restored that go up and down the stairwell. But his baby of restoration at the time was wood. He knew all about wood. He wrote a book on restoration on wood. And he's still here. He still turns out to be now their #1 restoration artist. He's restoring a Renoir painting. So we were very blessed to have the connections we had back then.
This wouldn't have been to that time, would it have?
Oh yeah, everything in here is gonna go to 1875 or older. But look how they spelled Arkansas.
That is crazy. Was that,
I
when
don't-
did they change it?
I don't know if they changed it or whether that was a mistake. Or whether that was maybe because if you say Arkansas, it always comes out like that. If you were, doing it phonetically, but it was, and it was Arkansas, Kansas. See if you look at,
Kansas.
yeah, that's what they called it at first, I think. So that would, I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but it's kind of funny. That piece of furniture there's not a whole lot of stuff in this house that belonged to Mr. Peel, because he sold the house
Sure.
back in 1910. But this piece of furniture is the only piece of furniture that belonged to his brother-in-law, his wife's brother.
Mhm.
It holds all the law books of both men. So that's what that's all about.
What's the stamp
Stan, what's,
thing?
Oh, probably, they did stamps for all kinds of things. I've got a bunch of them that belong to my grandfather.
Oh, really?
That when
Those
they
are
did
some
letters and whatever, some of them
Had
did
their own
impressions,
little-
yeah. They did all kinds of weird stuff.
Cool.
Anyway, last but not least, I'm gonna put this back.
So that pineapple would have been a decoration of
That
that
would have been a
time?
decoration. Everything that they decorated back then had to do with the outside world.
Not very many people got pineapples back then, did they?
But the flooring in here, the whole house was done this way. They didn't have stain back then.
Oh, really?
No. So they killed an ox and drained the blood. That's how the whole house was done. That floored me.
An
when I heard
ox
that.
or a cow?
Ox.
Had to be an ox.
That's what they tell me. If you go back into anything, there's something called ox shoe polish. So maybe it's made out of ox blood originally.
So this is original ox blood?
Mm-hmm. It's probably, and originally it probably had a wax, like a candle wax or a beeswax.
That went over it?
Yeah. Now I think it's been, what do you call it? Polyurethane,
Yeah.
to help preserve it a little bit. But this is the only room they did that in, and they did it because they didn't have stain. Now, when we get upstairs in the master bedroom,
They did, they had ox.
and they named the shoe polish after ox something or other. And of course, people, when you tell them that, all of a sudden they're the ones that related to it and said, hey, that's why they call it shoe polish ox.
Would that have been like a closet or something?
That was another window, just like that.
Oh.
Now, they tried to close it in but it's not deep enough to even hang clothes in, so it's like a storage room. Upstairs, when we get upstairs, they did the same thing in the room upstairs, but that's deeper. That one could be a closet.
So neat.
Let's go across the way here. Go over to the front parlor.
Front parlor, the living room.
Yes. Sometimes called the ladies' parlor, and that's probably because of the pink walls. That was her favorite color.
They have the 3D HVR.
Yeah, when you get
That's it.
when you get upstairs, there's one you can touch. I always tease my son. He writes for VR.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, big time. Every time he looks at those and he wants to touch it, you can't touch it. You can touch the one upstairs.
That's
But I
hilarious.
said, "That's your first VR," you know. He just spent all day yesterday.
That would have been like a trinket only for the rich right there.
Yeah, what was the 3D pictures too? Pictures just were coming out about them. If you look in this room, there's a picture of Mrs. Peel. Give her a lot of credit. I mean, my goodness gracious, that woman
Sure, she must have.
survived 5 years in the Civil War, starving to death with children, 5 of them. And then she ended up being in this house with 7 children for 10 years off and on, while he went back and forth to Congress. One of our docents decided to do this as her birthday on February 14th. So she did a little card
They
to
had
celebrate.
records back there, so they would have been
Yeah,
able to play
yeah,
music.
those are 78s.
78's a little bit smaller.
No, this is the size of a 78. I know. I used to use them like frisbees in my basement and crack and watch them crack. When I was a kid, I didn't know any better. My stepdad had a whole collection of.
Oh, wow.
That's a 78. It's not a 33. You're thinking of a 33. 33 was a bigger one.
So this would have been original to the time. That's crazy.
That was the time period that had.
These people were low. They had tunes. They had 3Ds.
If you look over in the table there, that candle, a lot of people have that candle, and they don't realize the history on that.
This
Yeah.
coil.
Yeah, it's called a courting candle, and depending on what Dad sets that candle's height at, when it burns down to the top rung, the gentleman has to go home. So if he doesn't really like them too much, it's only that high. If he likes them a whole lot, he'll put it up higher, you know. And it's like a time clock.
Sure. And what do they call it? A
Courting candle.
courting candle. That was actual thing, huh?
Yeah, it was an actual thing. These are courting couches. And that means there's a chaperone sitting in between them. And the chaperone very often fell asleep, so that's why they made it littler in the middle, so if he fell back, it woke him up. They didn't want him to sleep through it. No, they didn't want him to sleep through anything. Can you imagine having to court your wife with a man sitting between you? I can't picture that.
They wouldn't let the mom. It had to be the dad sitting.
Well, it's
between
usually the dad, or it could have been the mom, it could have been a maid, it could have, in this house, it's probably butler or
them.
something.
How are you gonna
You can't do anything at all. You can't even kiss the girl.
talk? Rather hold her hand when they fall asleep.
I don't think you can even hold her hand.
I feel like that creates more desire, doesn't it?
Yeah. True, but they want to be alone.
Yeah, but it's like you want to have her.
Down here is a vendor sample that looks like a toy that I would have played with as a kid. But it's a vendor sample. They have a big covered wagon would show up to property like this and be full of miniature versions of everything you could build. You know, this is just one couch. Upstairs you see 3 different kinds of couches.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have had 3 different kinds. You could have had tables and chairs and beds and cabinets of any sort. And just miniature, I keep looking at these chairs going, can you imagine a miniature version of these, the cutout work on something like this?
Yeah.
You know? Now they had, I think I said, I don't know, did I tell you they had 11 children? They had 11 children, but 2 were stillborn, so only 9 survived, but only 7 moved into this house because by the time
They were grown.
they were grown. But all the girls, part of their education was to learn how to sew and to play the piano. Because they had to entertain anybody that came to visit.
Sure.
So that's what they did back then. They all knew how to.
How to sew? Why did they have to learn how to sew? It was just
Because that's how
When
they
they got
wore their
married.
clothes. No, they made all their own clothes back
well, if
then.
they were rich.
Well, they could have bought them. They could have. But more than likely,
Hello. Okay, thank you.
that's a picture of Mr. Peel at his son's house. One of the boys behind him owned that house. It was after his wife died. His oldest boy died at 38.
Oh, no.
And so he died at a very early age, and Mr. and Mrs. Peel took in his wife and children to help support him because they needed support. But he's that picture's taken with two of the boys that were left, but his wife is already gone. That one little girl in the picture here created a quilt that's upstairs on the bed, which is kind of neat. Incredible quilt, because I'm a quilter.
How heavy do you think that piano is?
Well, the piano probably goes back to 1860.
How heavy?
Oh, I don't know, but these come off.
Oh,
That's
really?
why they did that. They created this so that you could transport it easier on a covered wagon. The house I did in California had the same one.
I guess you gotta think about that stuff back in that day. Oh, it's the cover latch.
Anyway, come on this way. And as you pass, you see a door on the right. When they built this house, they built 5 cellars.
This door you're talking
Yeah, it
about?
goes to the cellar.
Okay.
It goes to one of the cellars right below us, and it goes, the cellars all go to the back of the house. If you look around this room, behind here is what they call a butler's pantry. And that was a storage room originally. That was the end of the house. Now, the fireplaces in the house are all coal burning. And the reason is because of fire. Fire was such a hazard back then that they didn't have a regular fireplace in the house. So they had one real fireplace that was away from the house, way in the back. They called it an outdoor kitchen. That's where they cooked everything. Behind here was a room that was strictly to store everything they used in this room.
That's a lot of stuff they needed back then.
Yeah, now children didn't eat in this room unless they were over 13.
Oh, really?
Until children were fully mannered, they couldn't eat in this room. Anyway, back there is a butler's pass-through where the butler would have been serving everybody at the table. But this tablecloth was created by a local lady whose children donated it. And I'm glad they found a spot for it because it took her 7.5 years to create this. This is called tatting. It's a total different thing than knitting and crochet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do the little circles and then they put them together. So I can't imagine all the hundreds of circles went into this. 7.5 years though, I can't imagine her doing that either.
That's crazy.
Now the dishes on this table, those are his dishes from Congress. When he went to Congress, he had to.
This is probably real silver.
Yeah, this was left of her silver. And it's really, the monogram is only on the spoons and on the forks. There's a monogram on it. We had to stop cleaning them because all the silver was coming off. People don't realize that sterling silver back then is just plated. It's never solid silver because solid silver is very pliable.
Yeah.
You know, it bends too easily. So they had to put a base underneath and then dip it. When I was a youngster and first working, I worked in a store where people came in to have their silver replated all the time. Anyway, other than that, those are his dishes from Congress. When he went to Congress, he had to set up housekeeping. He had to take one of his daughters with him. That particular daughter was the only one in the whole family that got an education. She also got a high school education and a college education, which none of the other kids had that opportunity. But, and then lastly over here, this is her china for this room. She goes up in the side here. But that teapot goes back to the early 1800s.
What would that little bitty teacup up right above your head?
Up here?
Yeah.
That's an egg holder. Back then they used to do what they called soft-boiled eggs. And they'd crack it, put it in, and eat it. That's how they eat. Boil it. But you
I have 4 people here for the tour at 12:30.
Oh, we better get
I will send them down.
We're gonna go upstairs. Let's go upstairs.
All right, thanks for letting me know. No problem.
Upstairs. Now, if you look around this room, first of all, that stairwell didn't exist. The banister here went straight to the wall. Somebody added this over the years. After he sold the house, now what it had originally was an attic stairwell that folded down.
Oh,
Because that was
okay.
considered an attic up there. It was only as big as this little room that's pictured here in the needlepoint that somebody did. Other than that, you can touch this one if you want. So I pull this down. Okay. It's called a viewfinder. I think there's another name for them too.
Is it just to be able to look at the picture a little closer?
No, it should be giving you a 3D effect.
I'm seeing double.
Well, try another one, because I don't know, sometimes they
Okay, hang on.
don't work, sometimes they do.
Maybe the plastic on it would mess
Who
with it a
knows?
little bit.
And it could be you've got it too close or something, because you can pull that back too.
Oh, I got you.
Does that make any difference? Should give you a 3D effect. I know I tease my son all the time about it,
That's crazy.
because he writes for virtual reality. In fact, he spent all day yesterday at the Apple store, because they were unloading the new.
Stuff.
Mhm. Anyway, if you look on the wall there, there's a rundown of all the children.
This is the children here?
Yep, at different stages in their lives, because that's all we could find decent pictures of. The top two children never moved into the house. The gentleman there was 21 when they moved into this house. The girl over there she was 19 when they moved in here. She'd been married for 3 years already. She got married at 16, and 16 was considered an old maid. 13 was the average age. You know, people always say, oh, they were so little back then. I said, if you're 13 years old too, you'd be little, you know. The men didn't get married that early. They usually wait, usually 21,
Okay.
the men. But yeah, no, it was like unbelievable. Now if you look here, this young lady here, that's the one that went off to Congress with her dad. And then this one is the last baby of the family being born the year they moved into this house.
No picture.
So we don't have a picture of her. You know, come on in here. This is the boys' room. Only 2 boys lived in here. That oldest boy was already a lawyer, and he was gone. There's a picture of each one of the sons. The oldest boy is on the right there. He was the one that passed away at 38. Mr. and Mrs. Peel took in his wife and children. And over here on the left is the middle son who ran a bank in downtown Bentonville.
I got you. What were these?
Those are books. Don't touch them, honey. Those are really books. They're really tiny, tiny little books. And they're very tempting.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. You're right. Anyway, if you look at the youngest son is over here on the mantle.
That would have been the clothes back in the day.
Yeah, that's what they did back then. Now this door here, this door is another window just like this, that somebody made into a closet. The youngest son is over here. He ended up running a newspaper that his daughter or his wife's parents owned, and that's what he learned.
Mira, ese es el juguete de los niños de antes. El caballo negro que tú tienes, que le brincan, ese es
That's called Bucky the Bucking Bronco. And by the way, he's been through 5 generations. And look at his ears are even gone. Some poor child was holding on to it for dear life. I could imagine 2 boys torturing each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Ya ves que no tenía muchos juguetes. Mira, nomás tenía este juguete y esos juguetes ahí. Y esos libros. What about? Oh, y cuando tenían que hacer pipí,
Chamber pot.
tenían que sacar una cazuela, hacer pipí, y luego al rato en la mañana cuando se despertaban, la tenían que bajar abajo y sacar afuera a tirar.
And little boys
Porque
wear long dresses.
no dormían. La verdad, antes no tenían baños en la casa, tenías que ir afuera. ¿Sabías eso?
He won't remember. Not across. Everything's covered here.
Este hubiera sido el cuarto de mamá y la papá, el papá y la mamá.
Now, if you look around this room, first of all, that did belong to the family. It's a Lincoln rocker, got its name because Abraham Lincoln was in a rocker like that when he was assassinated. This little crib came from the house, the cabin that you were in. It was in the upstairs of the cabin. So we thought it was appropriate to bring it here because they were having that last child as they moved into this house. And if you look on the mantle there, there's a picture of this house with the dirt road. And if you look at the left side of the house there, you see there's no porch. You walked by a porch there. That didn't exist when they lived in this house. But
On this front part of it?
yeah, but on the left side there, you see the ice house that you walked by. And then if you look in the back of those trees there, there's outbuildings. They had 5 outbuildings on the property for all the help that helped. You gotta imagine they had 5,000 apple trees. I can't imagine.
Yeah, how many people they had working
Yeah.
here?
To working here, plus all their gardens.
How many acres did they have?
180. And 100 of those acres were devoted towards apple orchards. They had their chamber pot and a little cabinet in this room. That door over there didn't exist when they lived here. And then last but not least, we have an exhibit here, gentlemen, that Mr. Peel wrote into his will. Now, it was a man who he must have thought of very highly of. He was the local minister, but he also hired him when his wife passed away as a manservant. He didn't really need a manservant because when his wife passed away, he had a daughter-in-law to take care of him because he was older. I think that he developed a real close relationship with this man. We don't know what yet. You know, being the local minister meant that he had a whole following that came to church, that he had access to all those people that were of that working class that could have brought this house into the 20th century, which we just found out about, that this house was in the 20th century by the time he sold it. Now you gotta imagine Mrs. Peel, first of all, passed away in this room on Christmas Eve. And that was in 1902. By 1903, he was out of the house. That could have been a week, that could have been 2 months, we don't know. By 1904, he had the house on the market.
He just didn't want to be here. There was too much house for him.
I think it was more than that. Probably too many memories.
Yeah.
You know, he had all his family here. Anyway, bottom line is he moved out. By 1904, he had the house on the market. Didn't sell it. By 1906, he still hadn't sold it. So by 1906, he wrote a program book that I'll show you downstairs. It was only as big as my hand. And it had 6 pages in it. And he wrote everything in there, typed it all out. Which was a sales pitch to try to tell people how much stuff he had on the property. That was the first time that we found out that this house had been brought into the 20th century. It had running water, it had 3 bathrooms, it had electricity, it had everything that the 20th century could provide. But this was the middle of the country. That stuff took a long time to get here, you know. I have a feeling maybe this gentleman had more to do with it than people know. But he hired him when his wife passed away as a manservant. He left him money and he left him all his clothes. The clothes made sense to me because he was a minister, and Mr. Peel's stuff would have been very fancy for a lawyer, you know. And he left him only $100. That doesn't sound like much in our estimation, but that was the equivalent of almost $3,000 back then. Anyway, we don't know. He developed a real close and he's a black man. You know, here he'd gone through the Civil War, you know, but...
Maybe it's his way of making things right.
Well, he marched a different beat, and that started out with the Indian tribes. You know, I mean, that was something, he saw the Trail of Tears go right through here. You know, so he was aware that the people were suffering, you know, and suffering for different reasons. If you look at the quilt here, that quilt was developed by that little girl in the picture downstairs that was on the piano. And if you look at it, those are 12 stitches per inch, which is unbelievable. That's what they did. I got a magnifying glass out because they were so perfect. They looked like they were done on these big machines they have now. It was done by hand. My mother's generation learned to do 12 stitches per inch.
What does 12 stitches mean? Let me see.
See this? From here to here is 1 inch. That's 12 stitches in there if you count them.
Oh, that's...
Well, they use their hand like a sewing machine. Down, up, down, up.
Oh, it took forever to do that.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays, we do it with a big hoop in the middle and go out with the hoop. I'm a quilter, so I count
stuff
4
matters,
to
too.
5 stitches, not 12. Because you do it different. But as long as they're even, that's all they care about nowadays. You go across the way here. Now, as you cross through that little opening, that was a wall originally. Boys were on this side of the house only, and girls were on the back
Hombres
side.
estaban allá, chicos, y chicas estaban acá. Como en nuestra casa, ¿verdad? Yeah, this does look a lot more like a girl's room.
Well, this only housed probably 4 girls though, because the oldest one was already married, the youngest one was just being born. The one on the mantle is the one that went to Congress with her dad. The one over here, she ended up in a sanatorium. We think she suffered from postpartum because she was there for 30 years. Because back then they did electric shock and all kinds of things, and that permanently damaged them. You know, that's what happened back then. And then over here, 4 of the other daughters, including Silhouette Baby, those are her twins. She had twins like her mother that survived. Now you look at the quilts in here, these are all very old, but the one on that bed on the mattress part, that one goes back to maybe 1860s, because what they did back then, they didn't throw any fabric out. And you gotta imagine they were loaded with getting fabric that was, they got flour and sugar and all that type of stuff in little bags of material. And it was cotton. So they saved all that cotton and they put it into a quilt. That's how
Makes
they
so
did it.
much sense.
They recycled everything.
The one on this one you're saying?
That
Or
would
this
be
one?
recycled stuff. Now, that tends to look like it might be newer to me.
Okay. I
Um,
can't tell the difference. Which one did you say was the older one?
The one on the bed,
On the bed.
wrapping the bed.
Yes, that looks.
Yeah.
I could tell.
Well, the reason is because black is the first color to go on a really old quilt. That's probably 1860s. And there was something about black dye back then that deteriorated before any other color. I don't know, there was something in the dye.
And that was okay.
Yeah, that's, people say, well, that's brown. I said, no, it was black.
That's crazy.
Anyway, from here, we have a couple wedding dresses. They have nothing to do with the family, but there's a picture of the young lady that got married in this one from 1913. And then back here, we're not sure what this room was used for, but basically, we turned it into a sewing room because all those girls would have known how to sew, and it was right off the girls' bedroom.
Was that a common thing in those times to
No.
have a setup like
Well, a common thing we think would have been a maid's room. That baby would have been taken care of by the maid. But bottom line is, you can't prove that. Unless you can prove it, you can't do that. So we had to make it into a sewing room. Because we know we can prove that all the girls knew how to sew. The reason this room is like this is they just got rid of those. They're getting rid of
those style of lights.
Yeah, and if you look, you see this house was being restored right about the time that computers were coming out. So if 91, they came out about 83 or 84 or something like that. But there's plugs going on, but this room was used as an office. From here, we're gonna go down the stairs, but you gotta imagine, first of all, they had a set of stairs that emptied out into their butler's pantry below us. And
This layout was a little bit different.
Yeah, so we think that it had a set of stairs that was really steep.
Kind of like
And
those
narrow.
ones we saw going on.
Yeah, but even worse than that.
Even worse than that?
Yeah, girls weren't treated as well.
Really? Even in the house?
Yeah. This didn't exist when they moved here. This was outside. That porch that you walk by out here, that didn't exist. But this flooring did. And it had grass there. This was outside, it had grass.
Oh, this was the outside?
And back here is their actual kitchen. This was a coach house back here. Mr. Peel, when he went off to Congress, he brought back the fact to the local barber that men had to start bringing their own mustache cups when they went to the barber to get their beards cut, because they were transmitting diseases between each other. Because they didn't have the disinfectants and stuff that we have now to clean things. So they got them to all start bringing, there's one man's collection that takes up this whole wall in the middle of Bentonville, across from the library. It's a new place that they opened up. And this is just a little inkling of the cups.
So you would take, what?
Well, they all brought in their own cup and then stored it at the barber. And then used it when they came in to get their beards trimmed.
What would they use a cup for?
Put the water in there, the soap in there to do their beards and stuff.
They were just using the same dirty water for everybody.
Well, it wasn't just the dirty water, it was even the soap and the same cup in there.
And the same
guy was,
brush.
yeah, and the same guy was using the same, using
So
the
he was the one that came back and was like, hey guys, we gotta change it up around here. This isn't right.
Well, he learned that in Congress, when he was off in Congress. So
Wow.
he learned that, which was kind of cool. Over here are 3 books here. 2 of them were written by Louise May Alcott. I don't know if you know Little Women. You know the movie Little Women?
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 books are written by that same author, and they were brought back to the girls because he met her in Washington when he was in Congress, and he brought her back to the daughters. There's a picture of that little rocking horse.
Mm-hmm.
These are some different toys that they had in the early 1900s. That's what the house looked like in 91. That's why he was ready to bulldoze it down. This is the master bedroom with a tree growing in the window. That's the front parlor with somebody who's ripped out the whole fireplace there. And then you could see junk. I mean,
It wasn't terrible.
there was somebody that...
Was it abandoned for some time?
Well, no, there was somebody that owned the property for 50 years that was a milk farmer. And all he ran was milk cows through here. And he never used the house. So it got taken over by vagrants and whatever, Now this is that little book that I told you about. It's only this big. But that's the book that we had to blow it
That
up.
was the advertisement to sell the property.
Which is unbelievable. Tells you 5 barns, wells, ponds, fruit trees. This is where he found out he had 4,000 apple trees.
So that well that they put there in the middle,
That house was built next to a well. That's the well.
that's the original well.
That's the original.
I was thinking, I was like, wow, they have the well right on the dang porch. That's pretty.
Well,
Gosh
when they
darn.
went to hook up water, they had the water right there. And right now we're testing the water.
It's probably better. It's probably the better one than what you get from the city.
Which surprises me because of all the stuff that's underground anyway right now. But the well is only 27 feet deep. Everything around this area is very shallow for a well. Usually wells go 100 feet down or more.
From what, depending on where you're at.
But apparently this area is very
Pocketed with.
back. Here's the actual kitchen. These are remnants that we found in the bottom of the ice house. All the stuff in here, and then that stuff that we used in the ice house. Up here shows you how they insulated the ice house. And then back here's the kitchen.
When you say ice house.
It looks like an outlet house that you pass.
Uh-huh.
It's a little building. It's an ice house. They used to have to get ice from somewhere to produce it because nothing here produces it. Normally ice that you get for an ice house you would cut out of the lake
Yes.
and store it in somewhere. I know.
Oh, so they would dig a hole and
and bury
border it with
yeah.
ice
Yeah.
and switch out the ice as needed, I guess.
I guess I'll let it melt through. I don't know. That was the refrigerator. That's how they did it.
Icebox.
Yeah. So where would they get their ice?
Well, there used to be a place down in Springdale, I think, where you get ice, and then eventually Rogers had an ice house, and Bentonville had one. The
So is that
moment.
something they could only do like in the wintertime?
No, they could do that all year once they produced ice.
I guess there was
ice
electricity at
Yeah.
some point, yeah.
This is their actual kitchen. Don't hit your head on that. But if you look around, first of all, that's the only fireplace in the whole property. And that's the one that they actually cooked everything in. They probably had something outside even for big items.
So originally this is all detached, is what you were saying right earlier.
Well, it wasn't really detached from the coach house. This is the coach house. That's the door that went to the coach house.
Oh, okay.
Now it's that coach house has been renovated into a full kitchen for functions on the property.
Okay.
But that's what they did originally. Now they had to come out of this door, go around the house in the grass, and come up through the butler's pantry there to have food prepared that they ate. Over here's a chicken incubator. I didn't know they had such a thing. They put eggs in there. It has a grate on the bottom so that when they hatch, they're not sitting in their own poop. And then finally they bring them out when they're a little bit more mature. But bottom line is, Candle heats the water on the side to get wet and waste heat inside it. That's their everyday dishes there. This, I didn't know what this was. This looked like a lethal weapon to me.
Look like some barbed wire of some sort.
No, yeah, but it holds corn in the cob. To dry the corn in the cob, because then they mash it and make cornbread and cornmeal out of it. And that's a butter churner. Imagine that much cream in there to. If you pull that, it makes it rotate around.
Good old days.
Of course, this didn't exist either.
No.
This is all part of the rental stuff they do on the property. This was a porch. It only went to where the indentation is and then it stopped. Probably about here, because that's where the end of the house was. Now there's a door that comes off the dining room that would have come out here too. But none of this existed. This was all added by Mr. Long. And bottom line is he added that building, which is another rental spot, which sometimes could be rented with the whole thing. Front one is for brides and grooms to get dressed up. A lot of times they have a big white tent that they'll pitch out here.
Yeah.
At Christmas time, they had a big dinner out here to raise money for this place, and they had big heaters out there under the tent. They operated that way. That's really the end of our tour.
Awesome. I really appreciate your knowledge
We'll go out
and
this way.
information.
So where do you live here?
I live in Centerton.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not from here. I just moved here a couple of years ago. So.
Okay. Well, I moved here 5 years ago, and I lived right across the street from Centerton.
Oh,
You know where distribution center is?
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm more towards the Highfield area, I guess you would call it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You gotta remember that porch didn't exist.
No.
And that's,
What do you do, man? You just do this for yourself, or you throw that online?
It's live on YouTube.
Oh, it's live right now?
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
On weekends.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, I show off things in the 4-state area. I'm from Bentonville, so anywhere I can drive to in about 2 hours, I go show stuff off.
Okay.
Like
cool.
like last weekend, I was at Springfield, Missouri for Buc-ee's.
Is it just a hobby, or?
Yeah, it's just a hobby.
So you're into history then? It's kind of your thing?
Anything touristy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. What's up? I
It's
like
fun.
your fancy deal. What does something like this cost?
It's a gimbal. This is $150.
totally,
That's great.
totally worth it, man.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah,
get
I saw
all the
him
other stuff.
moving it from there.
Yeah, it's got a little
And it-
thumbstick to move it
looks like
around.
it goes with your body, you know. Like
It does.
Oh,
It's-
it goes with your body.
Yeah,
look,
it
moves.
it tracks around. It catches all the traction.
In other
and
words, you know how you move, you can do all kinds of distortion when you do it.
yeah,
You know.
And like my
All up
hands-
on your tag. Check
my
it
hand's
out.
shaking right now, but the camera's still. It absorbs all the vibration also.
Yeah, which is great. That's why I noticed that right. I have 2 sons that are solid computer. The one son writes for virtual reality,
That's
and the other one works at Walmart.
what's that sucker called again?
A gimbal.
Gimbal.
Mhm.
That's
Awesome,
a
man.
great
Thanks.
gadget.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I hope I wasn't photobombing your video.
No, it's all about being where people are at.
No.
The people I watch do this most of the time, or where I learned how to do it, are people that go to Florida and California and go to Disney, and there are people everywhere. So
So what's the incentive to do that for them, I guess? Are you trying to get enough followers on YouTube to get some type of paycheck, or?
you can.
Yeah. Are you there yet?
No.
No?
Nah, I'm just starting. Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. No, I just do it to get followers right now.
Awesome, man. How many you got right now?
Just 150 something.
Hey, you gotta start somewhere, man.
Yep, gotta start somewhere.
Keep at it. Good luck, dude.
Thank you.